Hi, welcome to my journey. I've already done my lightweight exercises and I've already walked my mile. So now I'm getting out for that outside 1 hour therapy that I know I need every day. You know, at least 1 hour of getting outside, maybe interacting with people, but at least interacting with people energetically. We've been spending a lot of time on electricity. A lot of time on electricity. Last night, it was brought to my attention that now we have to spend more time on thermogenics because it's very important, especially during the winter season. So hold on. So even though where I'm at, the temperatures are warm, right? They're saying there is some weather forecast out there talking about that by the end of the week, the weather temperatures are going to be plummeting into like more snow and freezing weather. Okay? And even here in the South, they're saying that it could extend, down here in the form of ice. And we know how ice affects us down here, right? So I had to send out this video that came up on my feed that I thought was very interesting called Raccoon Cove, right? And even though it was animated, I'm like, yeah, sometimes it's best that it's animated when people have video, archaic animation mindset. Animation is a good thing, right? So I'm watching it and I'm like, damn, this is a very good video to share because it talks about thermogenics, right? And what is thermogenics? That's the breakdown of heat. He talks about it in the form of like calorie breakdown, how we are just like these luminaries. And we don't even know it because our light is infrared. I'm like, yeah. Right? We don't even know how strong, our light waves are because we're not taught to think that way. Right? Some of us aren't even taught to think at all. Right? Especially as women. They don't like us. They don't like us to think. They don't like women to think. Like, why do women have to think? They make us feel dumb. Who's us? Men? Anyway, thermogenics. So, a few of my videos in the past, I've talked about, how to keep warm, about the sweating, and things are different in this era because they don't really allow us to utilize animal skins the way they did in the past. We used to be able to use animal skins. Animal skins, they're better than merino wool, right? Because it repels water, right? It's water repellent. It has it insulates heat. Yep. And the sad part about it is that it's a carcass of of an animal, all right? But they don't feel that way when it comes to goose downs, okay? And they're like, yeah, get you a goose down pillow and a goose down coat and goose down mattress, and yeah, okay? Because they haven't felt that, they don't feel that kind of sentimentality towards geese. Okay, whatever. And you know me, I'm always looking at them like, can we eat them? Yeah, can we eat the geese and the storks? The storks are huge. My God, they look delicious. But anyway, oh wow, somebody got a flat tire. And then, they, on that video, they were trying to talk about, the truth of the matter, that a lot of preppers, to some degrees, might be worse off than somebody that wasn't prepped because of overconfidence, right? They would be overconfident in believing that 0-degree sleeping bag was going to keep them warm, right? Okay, so it will, under ideal circumstances, right? Under the same circumstances presented that they made the test under, period. Okay, so right, and then other people, they were like, yeah, I layered my clothes and I'm active and all of this stuff, and it was like, yes, but you can't be active, sweat, and not have an insulation layer that will reflect your heat back down to you, rather than letting the heat of your body escape, right? Nobody really ever, considered themselves to be like a battery or a generating light. They don't really consider themselves that way, but they should. They should. Because it's that generating light, that keeps us mobile, keeps our automatic functions going. So I watched the whole thing. It was about an hour and 20 minutes, right? Had a couple of commercials, but it wasn't that bad, right? You know how some videos, they have a commercial like every 5 minutes, and that, you see, that detracts from the whole message, because people are too irritated that they had to sit through commercial, because they want to get paid, and and then not even care that the actual message gets across. That's why YouTube is a little bit different than these other platforms, right? These other platforms, they're all about sensationalizing entertainment, okay? Whereas YouTube, they're more about, teaching and learning, and along those lines, documentation, stuff like that. Because even documentation, you're not exactly sure what you're learning at the time, but hindsight, upon review of something that was documented that had happened, a lesson a lesson gets downloaded to you, right? So and this is very important, like I said, during this, during this winter season, because we're approaching winter season. I think next Sunday, right? And some people will feel like, oh, the reason why, I feel so cold, or I caught a flu, or I caught a cold, or this, that, and the third, is that they'll feel like it was because they were caught off guard. Okay, I accept that. I do. But, tell us what being on guard looks like. Right? What does on guard look like? So that's what I wanted to say about that. Hopefully, shout out to Raccoon Cove, because they have a lot of good information out there. And I love the fact that they do it, using animation of raccoons, right? So that, people don't get all in their feelings, right? Because if you make it, like if you do skits and stuff and have people doing something, some people, they'll reject an idea just because somebody on the screen looked like they cousin or they uncle that molested them when they was 5 years old. Whatever. Okay, I'm sorry, but that's the truth, right? We live in a very despicable world, and most of the time it's men, and men intimidate people to the point where they better not talk about it unless they want to get to be sorted out, right? And that's how men operate. And we're trying to tell them that they need to stop. They need to stop this. They need to stop, feeling like they need to weaponize our sons, and and then grow up, despicable, and and a brute, and and that and they keep saying that the only way that they can be strong is if they're a brute, and it's like, yeah, we had that cartoon when we was younger, right? Brutus versus Popeye. Popeye was still strong, even though he wasn't walking around like a brute, right? Anyway, so Popeye used to eat like spinach, and the spinach was his, his fuel. Now, speaking of food, right? I've been sitting up here trying to figure out what I'm going to do with all of that cottage cheese that I got, right? Well, last night, I decided to try to make some ice cream out of 2 of the pints of cottage cheese. And it was so good. It was so good. I was like, oh, it wasn't really quite ice cream, because we associate ice cream with, creamy and fluffy and melt in your mouth, and and sugar that hits your bloodstream, like you just got inoculated with a dose of honey. Yeah. So, but it was still very good, because cottage cheese, it does have like a hint of sour, right? It has a hint of being sour that cuts through, even if you was to add some stevia or chocolate, right? It was still cutting through, and could be tasted through the ice cream, right? But I couldn't stop eating it. And I was like, you're being so critical, but on the other hand, you gobbling it up, right? So I went ahead and bought some sugar-free chocolate, some sugar-free caramel, some sugar-free baking bits, to mix in, into this ice cream combination. And oh my gosh, I'm telling you, I had a sundae. Now, I'll tell you what the flavor was that I made, during the initial trial. During the initial trial, I made chocolate and peanut butter. Yeah. Chocolate and peanut butter. Right. And then before it was all over and done with, I had added some chocolate pieces and, sugar-free caramel. But damn, the sugar-free caramel, the calories was high. I didn't even realize how high, how many calories even sugar-free caramel had. So I looked at the ingredients, and so they made the sugar out of, I think it was like sugar alcohol or something like that, or alcohol sugar or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. I wish I had read the ingredients before I had bought this, caramel drizzle, right? That's what it was called, caramel drizzle by Smuckers, right? Because it seems like I remember buying the caramel by Gray, Walmart brand, and the calories wasn't that high. It wasn't as low as the chocolate syrup, but it wasn't 90 calories for 2 tablespoons. Okay. All right. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do with the 4 pints that I have in the refrigerator, is that I'm going to turn them into ice cream. And chocolate, peanut butter, ice cream is a thumbs up. It's a thumbs up. Tastes really good. Okay? So now I know what I can do with 4 pints of the cottage cheese, which is great, because I kept wondering, my gosh, what am I going to do with these, all of this cottage cheese that they were handing out? And oh my gosh. And because of the peanut butter, right, is powdered peanut butter, I'm adding less calories and more protein. And I even added some chocolate, a little bit of just, straight chocolate protein, because I wanted it also to have, some of the, some of the nutrients and fibers that go along with the protein drink. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is it right here. This is it. Man, I went to sleep a happy camper last night, having ate that whole pint. Yeah. And I also added a banana for some smoothness and magnesium and potassium. Yeah, I did. And that could be why my muscles are hurting today, because I had me an extra dose of potassium and magnesium before I went to sleep last night. Yes. So, yeah. So this whole thing about learning how to, manage, this thermodynamic vessel that we're in, because we are in a vessel that's thermodynamic, it's important. It's important, to know how to maintain it so that, you can have the most comfortable vessel during the time that you're here on this plane. And granted, you could be mad that, nobody told you this. They should have told you this when you was 2 years old. You never would have taken these, dips and turns and, and that's true, probably, but then not necessarily. However, it's like, but now that you know, what are you going to do with the information now that you know? What are you going to do now? Right? Because if you know now what you didn't know when you thought you should have been taught, and still do nothing about it, what makes you think that even if they taught it to you back then, that you would have made the adjustments appropriately throughout your life? Where's the proof? Where's the proof? Now you know, so change your life and show us at least, well, this is the receipt. If I had known when I was, 2 years old, I would have changed my life the way I did starting, today, December 11th, 2025, and, changed my life to be a more spiritual person, in tune to my spirit, and, treating my vessel with the utmost, instructions, for the best maintenance available to last and preserve it for the longest time possible. Anyway, that was just too much. Hold on. Why is there all this traffic down here? Look at this. Here it is, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. All this traffic down here. What the hell? So anyway, another thing that was brought to my attention was the fact that, people are using a combination of different religious techniques, trying to hack an ascension. Right? And if you want to know what I'm talking about, Edgar, right? Edgar was the one that had encouraged them to combine Western and Eastern philosophies in order to achieve, a certain type of ascension. Right? And I was listening to it, and I did think that, it was very interesting, right? Because, they equated meditation with being similar to prayer, which it is. When we're praying, basically what we're doing is we're meditating, right? And then, when it comes to meditation, there's different kinds of ways to meditate. Like some people, they can meditate doing housework, right? Some people, they can meditate walking. Some people, they can meditate just standing still, like a soldier. A soldier, believe me, a soldier spends a lot of time, when they go attention, and then they have to stand at attention for like minutes, hours, they're standing there meditating. Believe it or not, they are. So meditation doesn't have to just be, sitting down Indian style. It doesn't. Meditation can just be, driving around in your car and you're meditating. Oh shit, I got back on the highway. Knowing that this highway is congested. Crazy. Oh well. We can always jump back off. So that was the one thing that, kind of tripped me out, because, I've always encountered people, who act like, the only way I'm thankful for my food is if I put my hands together, shut my eyes, and speak out loud a prayer. And I'm like, no, that's not the only way to pray. Right? Some of us out here, we can walk and chew gum and talk at the same time. We multitaskers. Woo. So anyway, and that's one of the arguments that I had, and how that even came about in my world was, my father, he had his moments of being an atheist, right? He's like, you can't prove God to me. I don't believe God exists. That's how he felt, right? And I'm like, you can't prove to me how we even got here. Therefore I believe there's got to be a God, right? So, I had that debate with my father. Not very many people have the ability to debate with their fathers. They don't. So, I know that was special. It was a special bond that me and my father had, that we could debate. It was a special bond that me and my father had, that we could play chess. Yeah, there were certain special bonds that I had with my father. But that doesn't mean it was my favorite. Of the chemtrails, and how the chemtrails have built up the clouds in the sky, and you can feel that, they just wanted to get cold. Can we get some cold weather? All like it's so cold. I don't know why. Maybe they need a lesson in thermogenetics. Maybe they need a lesson. Because then, maybe then they'll stop playing. Stop playing with the weather. Stop playing with the weather! And it was so funny how the guy was saying that people were calling themselves like this new age prepper, right? And then they went and bought a tent to put up inside of their home, and you know, a 0-degree sleeping bag, and you know, and they were layering stuff, and they was exercising. And then, you know, this video was saying, yes, all of those things can work, but it has to be worked properly. It has to be executed properly, right? So if you're going to work out to try to keep yourself warm, you know, don't work out to the point where you're sweating and getting your first layer of clothes wet. And if you do, then you have to take those off and replace them, dry your body off, and then replace them with, you know, with dry clothes, because you don't want that wet layer of clothes to freeze up on you, because that's how you can catch hypothermia and not even realize that you done played yourself, right? So I thought it was a very interesting type of video to share, and I really hope that people out there will actually go to Raccoon Cove's YouTube channel and see that there are a lot more informative things on that channel that they might need to watch, so that they can be informed and educated. I mean, it's great to watch videos for entertainment, right? But it's excellent to watch videos that inform you, educate you, and could save your life. All right? All right. So yeah, I think that's it for this video. I might make another video